evening, everyone. Just sharing this with here we go. Let's have a little look at what we've got. Evening, everybody. Welcome to another week's live stamping with me. If you're watching for the first time, a very happy hello to you, and hello to all my regular watchers. It is Wednesday the 20th of July here. We've got 2 days left of the school year, and we have had 2 incredibly hot days here in the UK. Completely not what we're used to, and it's thrown all of us. I think temperatures hit 40 yesterday, which is unheard of here in the UK, but we're doing all right. A bit cooler today, but it does look like there's a storm coming over, so we'll see how we get on tonight. So Stampin' Up this month in July are doing a lot of features around watercolouring, and watercolouring is a really lovely technique that looks really scary. Well, I was really scared when I first started having a go at watercolouring, but I'm going to show you a few simple techniques tonight that I hope you will enjoy. So sit back, relax, have a fan with you if you're here in the UK, a nice cold drink, and just enjoy. If you have any comments or questions, pop them in the chat and I'll try my best to keep up. As always, all of the products that I use are available on my website, which can be found at staceymarsh.co.uk, and there's details in the listing of this video to add host codes and earn free items, so do have a look at that before you place your order. And don't forget, we also have that fab joining offer this month as well, so have a look at that as well, and I'll talk a bit more about that as we go through the video. So let's make a start. I'm going to flip my camera and then we can do some crafting together. Okay, so let's just see what you can see, and I'll just adjust my camera as I need to. Let me just check what that looks like. Let's just raise you up a bit. There we go. Right, okay, so you can see my desk now. Hello, Mum. My mum is watching. Hi, Em Woods, and hi to, oh, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Is it Marlies? From the Netherlands. Lovely. Thank you for joining us tonight. So, I thought I'd play with an oldie but a goodie. Celebrate Sunflowers. It's been around for quite a while now. You'll find it in the annual catalogue. And there are dies that coordinate with this that you can purchase separately, but I'm going to focus just on the stamp set tonight. So I'm sure a few of you will have this in your stash. Now, my preferred cardstock when I'm doing watercolouring is the shimmery white A4. As much as I love the Fluid 100 watercolour paper, I find I get a little bit of a smoother finish when I'm using the shimmery white. So we're going to play with that tonight. And it's sort of a cross between a basic white and a very vanilla. So it's not quite white, but it's also not quite vanilla. So I'm just going to cut myself a little card base, not a little card base, sorry, a little background layer that I'm going to do my stamping on. So I'm going to cut 10 and 14.4 for this. Now I'm going to go 14.9. Okay. And my card base tonight is going to be this lovely, let's go with So Saffron. So Saffron is our yellow tone that features in our, what's it featuring actually? I'm going to cut that. that features in our Subtles collection. You have to bear with me tonight. I've got 2 days left to work for the summer holidays and my brain is failing me somewhat, so do bear with me. Okay, so I've got a nice simple card base there, cut from So Saffron card. I've gone for a tent-fold card, so I'm going to just give my card a really nice score with my bone fold, not really nice crease with my bone folder, just so it stands nicely, and I can put that to one side. Before I do, I'm just going to make sure this fits, and it does. That will go the whole length of our card and leave us with a little yellow border showing around the edge. So our stamp set is a cling mounted stamp set, so it's this lovely red rubber. I'm quite often asked which stamp set is my favourite, and actually I do think the red cling is my favourite, but it changes all the time. Okay, so I've got my image there and I've added that to a block, and this is an E block, so it's one of the biggest blocks that we do, and I'm actually going to stamp this in a Stays On ink. Okay, so Stays On ink is one of our alternative ink pads, and it's great for watercolouring because it won't, it's not water based, so it won't sort of smudge. So I'm going to put me one of those there. Just give that a really firm press. Nice. And then I'm going to take a piece of scrap paper. Got this here. I could use the masking paper, but I'm waiting for some more to be delivered. I've exhausted my masking paper, and I'm going to cut this out just going to stamp that onto a spare piece of grid paper and cut this out. So I'm going to do a little bit of a mask with this. Now the trick when you're using a mask is you want to cut your image out, and you want to cut it out on the lines. Don't leave yourself a little border of white. I'm just going to trim around this with my snips. Evening to you, Louise. Have I decided on my August card plus? I have. I have gone for Lovely in Linen. It was the one that got the most votes between all of the polls, and I'm excited. I'm going to start creating that in the next few days, and that will go live next week. And I'm going to be doing something really special with that class because it's my birthday in August, and it's my last birthday in my 40s. So watch this space. Now I'm just trimming this round. Now if I use the die to cut this out, what I would find is it would leave a white border, and we don't want that white border. So I'm using this, I'm going to use this as a mask. A lovely bit of fussy cutting is just what I need. We've had a big awards ceremony today at my school, and as much as it went really, really well, it was really hard to organise. It involved a lot of last minute things, and it was really busy in a really hot hole, but it was lovely to do for the children. Okay, so do leave me a comment if you have this stamp set in your stash. It's always nice to know if I'm using something that resonates with people. Nearly there now, last few leaves. Now if you use the masking paper is sticky, so it will stick to your card, whereas this I'm just going to have to lie on top of my image and hope it stays where I put it. Oh, you were hoping for Forest Friends. Sorry about that, Louise. I did bring Forest Friends to Coffee and Card this week, which was rather nice. Okay, so let's just find that. I quite like that, even with the Stampin' Up logo in it. Now the trick with this is to find out, is to try and match it up. So now let's do this. I used to have a really good trick for this. It's that leaf there that I think I use. Oh, here comes the rain. Right, so I'm going to line that up just there and leave that where it is. And then I'm going to bring my stamp back in. And I'm going to stamp that just over the top, like so. Oh my gosh, the rain. Hoping my internet holds out. So we've now got that like so. Okay, I want a couple of leaves. So if I bring my stamp set back in, and I'm going to use this little leaf image here, we can bring our sentiment back in, not a sentiment, our mask back in, and then I'm going to add just a couple of leaves. Sort of in and around. Lovely. Okay. You have the, Nails has just said she has this stamp set but it doesn't get much use, so we're going to change that tonight. Right, so I'm going to bring in my So Saffron ink pad and I'm going to give it a really good squidge. And when I open it, it will leave me some ink in there. What you can do is you can use your re-inkers for this. And I'm going to take a water painter. These are in the annual catalogue as well, and you'll find them in with all the colouring tools. Just seeing if I've got my So Saffron in there. I must order myself a new one. Okay, so we're going to go for it like this. Now, I tend to find I like to make my cardstock a little bit damp before we start. So I'm going to use a spritzer and I'm just going to lightly spritz. What this will do is this will help to move your water around. Now, my preference when I'm watercolouring is rather than using the water in here, I will use it as just a regular paintbrush. Okay, so bring in my colour and then just take my colour to my image. Now if you think it needs more water, just give it a little spritz. Okay, and we're going to add a really rough sort of colour to get us started. This will give us a nice base layer for us to work from. And then the more water you use, the more diluted the colour will be. Okay. Just going to give this another squidge. I can't seem to find my re-inker, but it's okay. We can work with it. Can anyone hear that rain above me? So you can see that's really quick to colour in. That's just my first layer. So now I'm going to colour in the second flower. When you're colouring a big image, this is what I sort of like to start with, just a really rough base of colour that you can then add detail to after. Is it normal cardstock? So it is shimmery white cardstock that's in the annual catalogue. You can use the Fluid 100 watercolour paper, that will look lovely. I would avoid using basic white because basic white isn't porous, which basically means that the water won't soak in, it will just damage your card. Okay, so now we've done that, I'm going to use a finer brush, like so, and I've gone to now, we've got a Daffodil Delight ink pad. Okay, so this is much darker, and I'm going to add some shading to my sunflower where there's a build up of the black line. So some of the work has already been done for us with this stamp set, and this is where there's a little bit more precision involved. What part of the country I'm in? I'm jealous of the rain. I'm in Kent, so down in the southeast, and it is hammering it down here. I will send it your way. Now, if you're not happy with this sort of colour and you want to add a darker colour, you can move to something like a Mango Melody, or you can move to crushed curry. I'm just adding, I think I might add a little bit of that afterwards. Okay, so I'm just going to grab a reinker. Daffodil Delight, here we go. So I'm just going to put a little dot of reinker on my ink pad. Now this will be really, really thick, really concentrated, because it's what we re-ink our ink pads with. So this will give me a really darker Daffodil Delight. Okay. So this is more of what I wanted, really. That's better. So I've just added a bit of water to dilute it ever so slightly. And just tipping it down in my part of Bedfordshire. Well, Bedfordshire and Kent is where the rain is at, I guess. Just what we want, a bit of watercolouring. I do find watercolouring to be one of those techniques where you just have to be patient. If you want detail and you want depth in your colouring, I've found just over sort of practicing, it just takes time to build it up, and you get the best sort of effect in layers. So can you see there's depth now starting to happen in our leaves, in our image? Can I show you at the end what I made with coffee pod? I sure can, Louise. It was a really cute card. And I've got a really, my head has got something in it with this Forest Friends that I'm going to try and create at the weekend. I just need to think about how I'm going to execute it. But when I look at Forest and Friends, this is what I see. And I'll show it to you, the one I've made it. Okay, so can you see there now, there's quite a bit of depth in that image. And I'm going to just move to some Mango Melody, okay, because sometimes sunflowers, they're a bit orangey, aren't they? Okay. The rain has arrived with a vengeance. I told you I'd send it. And there it is. Okay. So now let's use my really fine brush. Let's add in some water. And this should change a bit more. jumped over you, Debbie, and it's gone straight to Mum's. Just going to add a bit more to this. All you need to do is when you use your ink pads like this, before you put them away, just sort of give them a bit of a wipe out and a dry. So the more water you use, the more the ink will sort of travel. A little spider on my ink pad. This is another one of those stamps that looks really nice with the no line watercolouring technique, or the no line colouring technique. So this now looks more sort of fiery in its colour. And I think I'm really pleased with that. So can you see there's the difference? This is the one here that I've just coloured with the yellow, and this is the one I've added a bit more detail to. And I'm not going to worry too much about going over that line there, because we're going to go over that with some brown ink next. Okay, so we need to repeat that with the other one, so I'm just going to give my Daffodil Delight another squidge. Technical terms this evening, a bit more ink on, and then I'm going to just wet this piece ever so slightly again. What is the no line colouring technique? So the no line colouring technique, if you add it to, just type it into Google or to Pinterest or to YouTube, it's basically where, I don't know if I've still got the card, but I know. It's basically where you stamp using a really light colour, and then you colour it in so that it looks like there's no stamped lines around the outside. You get a really sort of authentic coloured look. It's really lovely. My little spider friend is still crawling on my ink pad. Okay, so that's my yellow done, and then now let's go back to my Mango Melody. Re-inkers, I'm quite often asked, do I need re-inkers, do I need to buy them? And it's very much a personal thing, re-inkers. It depends how heavy you are with your ink pads. It depends if you like to do sort of techniques like this. They're a good way of making sure your ink pads stay. Oh, it's on my card now, my little spidey friend. They're a good tool for making sure your ink pads stay in really good use. They're a great way for obviously re-inking your ink pads. this is going quite well. I'm quite pleased with this. And I'm going to keep the rest of the design really simple because I don't really want to take anything away from this watercolouring. Lovely. So there we have it. Now what you can do, if you wanted to, between your inking, you can actually dry it with a heat tool, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to add in some colour on my leaves now. So I've got an old olive ink pad. I'm going to add my colour to. So I'm doing exactly the same as I did to start with. I'm adding in a base colour, and I'm just making sure I go quite careful around those where the leaves meet the flower. And then just taking the ink and just dabbing it on now. And the ink will sort of travel. I'm just going to hold this down. Okay, I'm just going to dry that with our heat tool now. Go back in and pick up some more of that green ink. Okay, so that is the green, and then we have our brown ink now. So let's go with some early espresso. Let's really make that colour in the middle really dark. This is like a chocolatey sort of colour. It's great for colouring the centre of those sunflowers. And because there's sort of some shadowing built into that image already, I'm just putting the brown ink on to start us off. And I want to make that quite dark. Oh, Misty, that's really sweet of you. Thank you. I'm just playing around with some watercolouring tonight. So now we have our sunflowers done. I'm just going to heat that a little bit more to really make that set. And what I love about this ink, this cardstock, is because it's got a shimmer to it, you get a really lovely finish. Okay, so we have it like that. I'm going to grab some linen thread now, which is in my little box. I'm going to take some linen thread. The linen thread will be quite curly when you take it off the reel because it's on a small reel, so just run it between your thumb and your forefinger and it will then just smooth itself out. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap this around my card. Give this a little tie of a bow. trim that down a little bit, and then I'm going to stick that onto the front of my card now. Now, what I love about when you do this watercolouring is you get some real depth to your card, and I don't really want to lose that. So I'm just going to pop my glue on. And I just want to put my pressure on it where the cardstock naturally kind of meets it, because actually when you look at the card there's some really lovely texture there that I just don't really want to lose. So that's on there. I just want to see if I can move this to the other side. Probably should have done this before I stuck it down. But this is what happens, folks, when you follow me. Can't tell it off now. Let's do this then. This is another good way to do this. I'm going to fold it over, and then I'm going to try and feed that back through. Just going to take my card. Just going to take it out of shot so I can try and just take it apart a little bit. That's it. We're through. So let's just stick that back down. That's it. And then I want my bow to actually be this side. Right, here we go. This is better, gang. So this will give us a thicker bow that I think you will be able to see more of on the card. That's it. Prefer that bow. Slide it down a bit. And then we just want a sentiment. And we're going to go with something really, really simple, I think. And I am going to go with this sending sentiment. Shall we go for that, or should we go for a banner? Let's go for a banner. Let's go for Let's Celebrate, shall we? Now this stamp set, that's been caught there. This stamp set is in the main catalogue as well. Should we have just saying hello? Oh, I like that. Let's have this instead. Just saying hello. And I'm going to get some old olive card now. Let's have some Mossy Meadow. Decisions. There's just too many colours to choose from, isn't there? So let's work out how wide our sentiment is. So our sentiment is about 3 centimetres. So I'm going to cut myself a banner that's 3.5 centimetres wide. Okay. And we are going to emboss this sentiment. And I'm going to bring in some gold embossing powder. You've got to love some gold embossing powder with yellows and greens and browns. So I've got my sentiment, I've got my embossing powder, and I've got my embossing buddy. So embossing buddy is your best friend when you're embossing, especially when you're embossing on a dark colour. So you're just going to rub that across your card, and that just removes any static that may be on your cardstock. I'm going to stamp with lovely Versamark, and I'm going to pop that about there. Let's just hope it's straight. Not bad. Okay. So now we can take our embossing powder. Thank you, Jackie. The thread is my best friend in my craft one, because it just goes with everything. So now let's heat this. Lovely, look at that gold. That gold is so pretty. And that looks really, really nice on there. So I'm just going to trim this down ever so slightly. Take off about 1.5 centimetres. Okay, so we've got just saying hello there, which is a really nice little sentiment. I'm just going to curl this end here because that's quite a big area there, and that's lovely. I really like that. Now let's add some dimensionals to stick this down. I'm going to add a few along the top and a few along the bottom because we've got that thread running through the middle there. Okay, so we've got just saying hello, and then to finish that off, let's add a few little gems, shall we? Let's see what I've got in my box of tricks. Don't know if we've got any gold ones. Oh, I have these. These are like a metallic-y, sorry, a matte colour. Oh, I have some gold ones now. Let's use these. These are the brushed metallic adhesive backed dots, and there are some gold ones on there. So let's just add in a few little gold ones. For a bit more texture. Okay, so that is the front of our card, all done. Really pleased with that. There's quite a lot of weight on the front of that card, and we've just got that flimsy back there. So I'm going to go back to my shimmery white, and I'm going to just cut that down. Don't need to cut that down actually, that's going to just be stuck inside my card. If I can get my glue working. Which neither of my glues want to work this evening. These were used at Coffee and Card yesterday, and they now don't want to work. Here we go. The glue is coming out now. Where's my little glue pole? And there we have it. That is our first card all done. I'm really pleased with that. I love the sort of the depth you've got to the card because of the texture that's now on that watercolour paper. I also love that in some places the watercolours have kind of mixed, so you've got a little bit of brown into going over into that yellow. But let me know what you think. It's always nice to have a little bit of feedback. And then I'm going to have a little quick tidy down, and I'm going to make one more card with one of my other favourite watercolour techniques. Let's just put these bits away. Okay, so I'm going to bring my watercolour paper back in now, and I am going to cut this again 14.9 by 10 centimetres. Okay, so that gives us a nice That's the same size piece as the front of here. Okay. Now this time, I'm just going to give my stamp a little bit of a clean. So I'm going to use that same image. Let's just use our Stays On cleaner with this. When you're using Stays On, it's really important that you clean your stamp, because the Stays On ink will actually damage your stamp. Okay, we don't want that. Lovely, so that's cleaned that off really nicely. I need to clean my stamp scrub, which is why it's leaving some residue behind. Okay, now this time I am going to stamp. I'm going to use some clear embossing, I think. And we are going to just go across our watercolour paper with our embossing buddy. And then we're going to stamp with embossing. Stamp with Versamark. Oh, thank you everybody, really nice comments there. It's all going down well. Someone's going to revisit their stamp. I'm just going to stamp that in the centre. Okay. Like so. And then we're going to use clear embossing powder with this. Going to heat this so that it's set. So you're not really going to see this because it's going to set clear. But the technique I'm going to use, it's similar to an emboss resist technique, but we're going to watercolour it instead. And we're going to do 2 colours on this image. It's coming together now. And you know it's set because it goes really shiny. Misty's put, she's used this stamp set quite a lot, and she's going to be pulling out again. It's one of those stamp sets that I think is a real classic, and it's great for summer because we'll start seeing all these beautiful sunflowers popping up. So there you have it there, and it's just a really nice look. That would look really nice on a card with just a simple sentiment, but we're going to change it ever so slightly. And this time I'm going to go with a pink, because who doesn't love pink? Now, tip with this technique that I'm going to show you, I'm just going to grab myself some tissue. You need quite a bit of water, right? So I'm going to give my ink pad a really good squidge. It needs a bigger squidge. And I'm going to make this cardstock really quite damp. Okay. And then the trick is, you want quite a bit of water, and I'm just going to dab this on. Okay. And what this is doing is the ink is only going over the image, but it's spreading. So I'm going to heat this. And the trick is we're going to heat it between every single time. And it takes patience. You can heat it from the bottom as well. And then once you've done that, you're going to go again, okay? And you're just going to keep putting your ink on. Just giving my ink pad a really good squidge. I'm going to keep putting your ink on until you're really happy with what you've got. And then if you heat again, that will then set and you'll get a different colour come through. I'm just going to fold that down. Sort of manipulate it back, and then I'm going to bring in another colour. I'm going to go with a fresh freesia. I'm just going to re-ink this again. I'll add some more water to it. I think I've chosen an ink there that doesn't really show up, but it's okay. We'll work with it. Let's add a bit of Highland Heather in. Highland Heather is a bit of a darker colour. I don't actually think this is going the way it planned in my head, but let's just persevere and then see what we think. See if we can find the dye out, because the dye will rescue this, I reckon. So let's see if I can find my sunflowers dyes. Sunflowers, there we are. Right, okay, so let's cut the dye out, and I think the dye will rescue this because I've used two colours that aren't they're quite close to each other, so it just looks like we've got some muddy cardstock. So let's see if we can rescue this. Okay, so here we have the lovely dye. Let's just put my ink pad away. And this, I think, is going to rescue what I've been doing. I think that would have looked better if I'd have stamped in dark colour. But hey, we live and we learn, and if we don't try it, we never know. So that looks a lot better. So I'm going to dry that a bit more. and stick this on a card base. Let me grab a card base. Right, here we go. So I have a card base that is Flirty Flamingo, and I'm going to stick this down. Definitely need to be opening a new Tombow. Okay. So I've got a real wishy-washy background there. And I'm going to bring this in and just sort of line it up. Can you see that? So I'm going to stick that down. So what you actually have there is you have the embossing showing through underneath, and then you have that lovely watercolour. So I'm just going to get rid of my inky piece of tissue, like so. And then I'm going to grab my basic black stamping marker, and I'm going to add just a little speckle of black across there, like so. So we're saving this image. And that's the joy of watercolouring. You may look at it and think, what am I doing? And then just keep sort of going until you think, right, that's it. And then just try and change it ever so slightly. I'm just going to make this a bit smaller. I'm going to pop that on with a glue dot. So this is that linen thread. Again, I joked the other day to someone, I think it might have been at Coffee and Card, that someone needs to challenge me to make a card without this linen thread, because I just use it for everything. How are we going? Are we still watching? Now let's add a little banner now. I'm going to go with some black card for this. I feel like it's been a while since I've done some black embossing. So let's get our embossing buddy back in. Oh, I wanted it to be 3.5 inches, didn't I? Sorry, not 3.5 inches, 3.5 centimetres. Okay, so we've done our embossing. Sorry, we've done our embossing buddy. And now I'm going to stamp in Versamark. And then I'm going to add white embossing powder. I really like this just saying hello sentiment. And then let's keep this. Lovely. It's all done, and then I'm gonna snip a bit off of this again. Take it down by 1.5 centimetres. So that banner is now roughly 8 centimetres long. I'm going to curl my edge, so I'm doing almost exactly the same technique on this card as I did on the other one. And then I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to stick that on like so. So we've covered up quite a bit of that sunflower. So where are my dimensionals? Here we go. I quite like that. I quite like that the sentiment is doing all the work and that little sunflower is just in the background. Lovely. Snip that off. And that is card number 2. The last thing I've got to do is to add the piece of card to the inside so that our thickness of our card matches in front and in back. Let's see if my glue has now officially run out. Oh, got a little bit more. I think that might be it. No. And there we have it. So my mucky watercolour background actually has turned out really quite nice. And then we have here our first, so we've got traditional sunflowers and then we've got one that isn't so traditional. So do let me know which one you prefer. It's always nice to find out. My favourite one is definitely the first, but I do love the black and white sentiment on this one here. So just to recap what I've used the Celebrate Sunflowers stamp set. On this one I've used the Sunflowers dies that coordinates. And then here I've got the sentiment from Simply Fabulous, which looks really, really lovely on sort of a big banner. And that is in the forefront of our cards. So that's it from me today. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate you spending an hour of your Wednesday evening with me. If you have any questions about anything I've used or any techniques I've used, products I've used, please do get in touch. Everything I've used is available to purchase online at staceymarsh.co.uk, and if you have any questions I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I will try and be live with you next week. You can find out more on my Facebook page or on my Instagram. Have a lovely week, and I do hope you look after yourself. Bye for now.